In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 things that you should know before you purchase a Sony a6000 in 2021. So this camera is getting pretty old now. It's coming up on like 8 years old. So features that may have been great features when it came out now might be a little lacking or just, not as good compared to any other camera coming out today. So I basically just want to tell you 5 things that you should know before you consider purchasing this camera. These aren't specifically bad things or good things about the a6000. They're just features that you might not really think that it doesn't have or that it does have that I think you should just know before you consider purchasing this camera. But that's it. This is gonna be a pretty quick video. I just want to put these out there just so you know before you consider purchasing this camera, just in case any of these things changes your mind on it or even pushes you to purchase it even more. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. I don't really want to waste your time. Go down, hit the like button, subscribe, you know what to do. Let's get right into it. Alright, so 2021, the year of creators. Everyone's making videos now, everybody's vlogging, everybody's doing that sort of thing. One thing to know about this camera is that it does not have a microphone input jack. So you're not going to be able to hook up a microphone to this camera, like a Rode Video Micro or a lavalier microphone. Without a microphone like this, the mics built into most cameras are not very good. You can definitely get away with using them, but they're definitely nothing compared to the quality of an external microphone. So with the a6000, there's no microphone jack. You cannot connect a microphone to it. So you're basically stuck with the built-in microphone quality, which isn't very good, or recording the audio externally and then syncing it up in post, which is definitely doable. It's a little inconvenience, but it's definitely doable. So this is a fantastic beginner photography camera. And if you're buying it for that, this won't even bother you. You're not gonna care that there's no microphone jack if you just use it for photography. But for the video specific shooters out there, just keep this in mind. Alright, so the next thing to know is that the a6000 has a 24 megapixel sensor. So the crazy thing about this is that Sony still has, I don't know if it's the exact same sensor, but they still have a 24 megapixel sensor in all of their new cameras, like the Sony a6400, which I'm filming this on right now, the Sony a6600, the a6100, even the a7 III has a 24 megapixel sensor, although it is a full frame sensor. So even though this camera is 8 years old, you're really not missing out anything in resolution, unless you of course upgrade to like the Sony a7R4 or Sony a1, which have like 40 and 50 megapixel sensors. But any of the Sony APS-C sensor cameras from the a6000 and newer are gonna have the same exact megapixel sensor, 24 megapixels. So you are not missing out on any photo resolution by getting the a6000. All right, next up, Sony's color science. So the a6000 has Sony's older color science, which isn't very good, to be honest. I still love taking pictures with it and taking videos with it, but it's definitely lacking compared to Sony's newer color science or Canon's color science. It pretty much has like this green tint to it that doesn't look very pleasing, and you can definitely tell, compared to like a Sony a6400, which has an updated color science, and even like the Sony a1 or a7S III, which have an even newer color science, you can definitely tell the difference. So it has this green tint to it. It looks kind of weird. It just doesn't look natural. And it's just something that all of Sony's older cameras have been plagued with. It kind of sucks, but it's nothing that you can't fix in post-production. You can definitely fix it. It just kind of adds a little bit of time to the photo shooting editing experience. But I just want to note that it does have Sony's older, worse color science that just all around isn't that good. Next up, this is another video feature. So the a6000 does not have 4K video. Now this is something that basically every new camera has, even entry-level cameras have 4K video. But of course, the a6000 being like 8 years old, doesn't have 4K video. It only goes up to 1080p at 60 frames a second, which isn't that bad. I mean, 1080p video is definitely still good enough. If you watch all of my Sony NEX reviews, they all only shoot 1080p, and they still record some great video, as well as the Canon C100. I just actually recently made a video about that, comparing 1080p to 6K. It's definitely a big difference. I mean, even 4K to 1080p, there's definitely a difference, but I think depending on who you are, 4K still isn't really needed. And the 1080p coming out of the a6000 is still good quality. So it's not the biggest deal depending on who you are and what type of content you shoot, but it's definitely something to think about because you might be used to pretty much every camera having 4K nowadays. So I just want to make sure it's clear, the a6000 does not have 4K video. And last but not least, this is another thing that basically all new cameras have and that you might be used to if you own newer cameras, and that's the touchscreen capabilities. So basically any newer Canon camera especially has really good touchscreen capabilities. Even newer Sony cameras do as well, like the a6400. You can tap to focus. Sony's a little bit more limited in general, but with Canon, you can basically change all your settings, your ISO, your aperture, your shutter speed, and all that right on the touchscreen. You can change even other settings. You can scroll through the menus, all that using the touchscreen, basically like a cell phone. With the a6000, you can't do any of that. This camera does not have any sort of touch interface or touchscreen, which again is something that may not be a big deal to you, but if you're used to all the newer cameras that do this and are really easy just to change everything, Sony a6000 is not that camera. It doesn't have any sort of touch capabilities. So it's gonna be a little less intuitive for changing your settings, going through the menus. But again, this is something that, depending on who you are, it might not be a big deal, or it might be a deal breaker. So it's just something that I want to put out there. And so those are basically the 5 most important things that I think you should know before you think about purchasing the Sony a6000 in 2021. Again, I think this is a fantastic camera. It's a great beginner camera for photography, even for video for the most part. And after knowing all these 5 things, if you're still interested in purchasing it, then definitely go ahead and do it. It's just a great camera overall. I also have a bunch of videos about it, so go scroll through my channel, see if there's any that you like. It would really help me out, and also consider subscribing and liking this video as well. But that essentially wraps this video up, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.